Central Okinawan, or simply the Okinawan language, is a Northern Ryukyuan language spoken primarily in the southern half of the island of Okinawa, as well as in the surrounding islands of Kerama, Kumejima, Tonaki, Aguni, and a number of smaller peripheral islands. Central Okinawan distinguishes itself from the speech of Northern Okinawa, which is classified independently as the Kunigami language. Both languages have been designated as endangered by the UNESCO Atlas of the World's Languages in Danger since its launch in February 2009. Though Okinawan encompasses a number of local dialects, the Shuri-Naha variant is generally recognized as the de facto standard, as it had been used as the official language of the Ryūkyū Kingdom since the reign of King Shō Shin. Moreover, as the former capital of Shuri was built around the royal palace, the language used by the royal court became the regional and literary standard, which thus flourished in songs and poems written during that era. Within Japan, Okinawan is often not seen as a language unto itself but is referred to as the Okinawan dialect, or more specifically the Central and Southern Okinawan dialects. Okinawan speakers are undergoing language shift as they switch to Japanese. Language use in Okinawa today is far from stable. Okinawans are assimilating to standard Japanese due to the standardized education system, the expanding media, and expanding contact with mainlanders. Okinawan is still spoken by many older people. It is also kept alive in theaters featuring a local drama called Uchinashibai, which depict local customs and manners. History. Pre-Ryūkyū Kingdom Okinawan is a Japonic language, derived from Old Japanese. The split between Old Japanese and the Ryukyuan languages has been estimated to have occurred as early as the 1st century AD to as late as the 12th century AD. Chinese and Japanese characters were first introduced by a Japanese missionary in 1265. Ryūkyū Kingdom era pre-Satsuma hiragana was much more popular than kanji. Poems were commonly written solely in hiragana with little kanji. Post-Satsuma annexation, after Ryūkyū became a vassal of Satsuma domain, kanji gained more prominence in poetry. However, official Ryukyuan documents were written in classical Chinese. Japanese annexation to end of World War II. When Ryūkyū was annexed by Japan in 1879, the majority of people on Okinawa Island spoke Okinawan. Within 10 years, the Japanese government began an assimilation policy of Japanization, where Ryukyuan languages were gradually suppressed. The education system was the heart of Japanization, where Okinawan children were taught Japanese and punished for speaking the native language, being told that the language was just a dialect. By 1945, many Okinawans spoke Japanese, and many were bilingual. During the Battle of Okinawa, some Okinawans were killed by Japanese soldiers for speaking Okinawan. American occupation. Under American administration, there was an attempt to revive and standardize Okinawan. However, this proved difficult and was shelved in favor of Japanese. Multiple English words were introduced. Returned to Japan to present day. After Okinawa's reversion to Japanese sovereignty, Japanese continued to be the dominant language used, and the majority of the youngest generations only speak Okinawan Japanese. There have been attempts to revive Okinawan by notable people such as Byron Fija and Seijin Noborikawa. However, few native Okinawans desire to learn the language. Classification. Okinawan is sometimes grouped with Kunigami as the Okinawan languages. However, some linguists don't use this grouping and claim that Kunigami is a dialect of Okinawan. Okinawan is also grouped with Amami as the Northern Ryukyuan languages, dialect of the Japanese language since the creation of Okinawa Prefecture. Okinawan was labeled a dialect of Japanese as part of a policy of assimilation. Later, Japanese linguists, such as Tojo Misao, who studied the Ryukyuan languages, argued that they are indeed dialects. This is due to the misconception that Japan is a homogeneous state, and classifying the Ryukyuan languages as such would discredit this belief. The present-day official stance of the Japanese government remains of the idea that Okinawan is a dialect, and it is common within the Japanese population for it to be called or, which means Okinawa dialect. The policy of assimilation, coupled with increased interaction between Japan and Okinawa through media and economics, has led to the development of Okinawan Japanese, which is a dialect of Japanese. Dialect of the Ryukyuan language. Okinawan linguist Season Nakasone states that the Ryukyuan languages are in fact groupings of similar dialects. As each community has its own distinct dialect, there is no one language. Nakasone attributes this diversity to the isolation caused by immobility, citing the story of his mother who wanted to visit the town of Nago but never made the 25 kilometers trip before she died of old age. Its own distinct language outside Japan, Okinawan is considered a separate language from Japanese. This was first proposed by Basil Hall Chamberlain, who compared the relationship between Okinawan and Japanese to that of the Romance languages. UNESCO has marked it as an endangered language. Phonology. Vowels. The Okinawan language has 5 vowels, all of which may be long or short, though the short vowels e and o are considerably rare as they only occur in a few native Okinawan words with heavy syllables with the pattern ce or ko, such as misari, mensori, welcome, or tue tonfa. The close back vowels u and u are truly rounded, rather than the compressed vowels of standard Japanese. A 6th vowel I is sometimes posited in order to explain why sequences containing a historically raised e fail to trigger palatalization, as with I asterisk t hand asterisk tci chi blood. Acoustically, however, I is pronounced no differently from I, and this distinction can simply be attributed to the fact that palatalization took place prior to this vowel shift. Consonants. The Okinawan language counts some 20 distinctive segments shown in the chart below, with major allophones presented in parentheses. The only consonant that can occur as a syllable coda is the archaic phoneme n. Many analyses treat it as an additional phoneme n, though it never contrasts with n, or per meter. The consonant system of the Okinawan language is fairly similar to that of standard Japanese, but it does present a few differences on the phonemic and allophonic level. Namely, Okinawan retains the labialized consonants k and, which were lost in late Middle Japanese, possesses a glottal stop, features a voiceless bilabial fricative, distinct from the aspirate para, and has 2 distinctive affricates which arose from a number of different sound processes. Additionally, Okinawan lacks the major allophones and found in Japanese, having historically fronted the vowel u to I after the alveolars tdsz, consequently merging su into gai, su into shi, and both and into. It also lacks z as a distinctive phoneme, having merged it into dz. Bilabial and glottal fricatives. The bilabial fricative has sometimes been transcribed as the cluster hw, since, like Japanese, para allophonically labializes into before the high vowel u and does not occur before the rounded vowel o. This suggests that an overlap between and para exists, and so the contrast in front of other vowels can be denoted through labialization. However, this analysis fails to take account of the fact that Okinawan has not fully undergone the diachronic change *p per hour as in Japanese, and that the suggested clusterization and labialization into *hw is unmotivated. Consequently, the existence of must be regarded as independent of per hour, even though the two overlap. Barring a few words that resulted from the former change, the aspirate per hour also arose from the odd lenition of k and per second, as well as words loaned from other dialects. Before the glide j and the high vowel I, it is pronounced closer to, as in Japanese. Palatalization. The plosive consonants t and k, historically palatalized and affricated into tc, before and occasionally following the glide j, and the high vowel I, kiri, tsuri, chiri, fog, and kiora, tikura, chura, beautiful. This change preceded vowel raising, so that instances where I arose from *e did not trigger palatalization ke, ki, he. The voiced counterparts d and underwent the same effect, becoming dz under such conditions. Unari, nadzi, kunaji, il, and nokoiri, nukuziri, nukujiri, saw, but ka I, kagan, seasoning. Both t and d may not also allophonically affricate before the mid-vowel e, though this pronunciation is increasingly rare. Similarly, the fricative consonant per second palatalizes into before the glide j and the vowel I, including when I historically derives from e, sekai, shiki, world. It may also palatalize before the vowel e, especially so in the context of topicalization. Dushi, duze, dushi, friend. In general, sequences containing the palatal consonant j are relatively rare and tend to exhibit depalatalization. For example, mj tends to merge with n, rj has merged into r and d, and sj has mostly become per second. Flapping and fortition. The voiced plosive d and the flap r tend to merge, with the first becoming a flap in word medial position, and the second sometimes becoming a plosive in word initial position. For example, ruu, dragon, may be strengthened into duu, and hasidu, hashidu. Door conversely flaps into hasru, hashiru. The two sounds do, however, still remain distinct in a number of words and verbal constructions. Glottal stop. Okinawan also features a distinctive glottal stop that historically arose from a process of glottalization of word initial vowels. Hence, all vowels in Okinawan are predictably glottalized at the beginning of words, save for a few exceptions. High vowel loss or assimilation following this process created a contrast with glottalized approximants and nasal consonants. Compare uw et qw et pig to I, or ein ni qnni, rice plant, to mune ni nni, chest. Maraic nasal. The Maraic nasal n has been posited in most descriptions of Okinawan phonology. Like Japanese, n occupies a full mora, and its precise place of articulation will vary depending on the following consonant. Before other labial consonants, it will be pronounced closer to a syllabic bilabial nasal, as in ma, qmma, horse. Before velar and labiovelar consonants, it will be pronounced as a syllabic velar nasal, as in biata, bingata, a method of dyeing clothes. And before alveolar and alveolo-palatal consonants, it becomes a syllabic alveolar nasal n, as in kada, kanda, vine. Elsewhere, its exact realization remains unspecified, and it may vary depending on the first sound of the next word or morpheme. In isolation and at the end of utterances, it is realized as a velar nasal. Correspondences with Japanese. There is a sort of formula for Ryukyuanizing Japanese words, turning e into I, ki into gai, gi into g, o into u, and r into a. This formula fits with the transliteration of Okinawa into Uchina and has been noted as evidence that Okinawan is a dialect of Japanese. However, it does not explain unrelated words such as arigato and naifidibiru. Orthography. The Okinawan language was historically written using an admixture of kanji and hiragana. The hiragana syllabary is believed to have first been introduced from mainland Japan to the Ryūkyū Kingdom sometime during the reign of King Shō Shin in the early 13th century. It is likely that Okinawans were already in contact with Hanzi due to extensive trade between the Ryūkyū Kingdom and China, Japan and Korea. However, hiragana gained more widespread acceptance throughout the Ryūkyū Islands, and most documents and letters were uniquely transcribed using this script. The Omoro Sushi, a 16th-century compilation of songs and poetry, and a few preserved writs of appointments dating from the same century were written solely in hiragana. Kanji were gradually adopted due to the growing influence of mainland Japan and the linguistic affinity between the Okinawan and Japanese languages. However, it was mainly limited to affairs of higher importance and to documents sent towards the mainland. The oldest inscription of Okinawan exemplifying its use along with hiragana can be found on a stone stele at the Tamadan Mausoleum, dating back to 1501. After the invasion of Okinawa by the Shimizu clan of Satsuma in 1609, Okinawan ceased to be used in official affairs. It was replaced by standard Japanese writing and a form of classical Chinese writing known as kanban. Despite this change, Okinawan still continued to prosper in local literature up until the 19th century. Following the Meiji Restoration, the Japanese government abolished the domain system and formally annexed the Ryūkyū Islands to Japan as the Okinawa Prefecture in 1879. To promote national unity, the government then introduced standard education and opened Japanese language schools based on the Tokyo dialect. Students were discouraged and chastised for speaking or even writing in the local dialect, notably through the use of dialect cards. As a result, Okinawan gradually ceased to be written entirely until the American takeover in 1945. Since then, Japanese and American scholars have variously transcribed the regional language using a number of ad hoc romanization schemes of the katakana syllabary to demarcate its foreign nature with standard Japanese. Proponents of Okinawan tend to be more traditionalist and continue to write the language using hiragana with kanji. In any case, no standard consensus concerning spelling issues has ever been formalized, so discrepancies between modern literary works are common. Syllabary. Technically, they are not syllables but rather morae. Each mora in Okinawan will consist of one or two kana characters. If two, then a smaller version of kana follows the normal-sized kana. In each cell of the table below, the top row is the kana, the middle row in Romaji, and the bottom row in IPA. Grammar. Okinawan follows a subject and GT, object and GT, verb-word order and makes large use of particles as in Japanese. Okinawan dialects retain a number of grammatical features of classical Japanese, such as the distinction between the terminal form and the attributive form, the genitive function of ga, the nominative function of nu, as well as honorific plane distribution of ga and nu in nominative use. One etymology given for the un and uru endings is the continuative form suffixed with uri, undeveloped from the terminal form uri, uru developed from the attributive form uru, i.e. kachiru derives from kachi uru, kachun derives from kachi uri, and Umun derives from Yumi plus Uri. A similar etymology is given for the terminal san and attributive saru endings for adjectives. The stem suffixed with sa, suffixed with ari, takasan derives from taka sa ari. Ichi-san derives from atsu sa ari, and utasru derives from uta sa aru. Parts of speech nouns are classified as independent, non-conjugating part of speech that can become a subject of a sentence. Pronouns are classified the same as nouns, except that pronouns are more broad. Adverbs are classified as an independent, non-conjugating part of speech that cannot become a subject of a sentence and modifies a declinable word that comes after the adverb. There are two main categories to adverbs and several subcategories within each category, as shown in the table below. Prenominal adjectives, conjunctions, interjections, exclamations, verbs are classified as an independent, conjugating part of speech that shows movements. The conclusive form ends in adjectives. Adjectives are classified as an independent, conjugating part of speech that shows property or state. The conclusive form ends in are classified as an independent, conjugating part of speech that shows existence, a decision of a certain thing, attaches to a substantive. Adjectival verbs are classified as an independent, conjugating part of speech that shows the state of existence of events, attaches to words that shows state. Auxiliary verbs, prefix, suffix, others,